Hi, so today what I'm going to talk to you about is how to make a circle skirt like this one that I posted a couple weeks ago, or how to make a lovely little tree skirt. They're basically the exact same things that you would do. The steps are the same, it's just going to be in the size that you use and the amount of fabric. So for this skirt, which comes right above the knee, I used roughly about 2.5 yards of fabric that was 55 inches wide. So if you want a longer skirt, you will need more fabric, or you can make it shorter, you can add ruffles. It just really is going to determine what you want to do. So for this particular video, I'm going to show you how to do this using an 18-inch doll. Really something easy to do. Your first step is going to be measure your waist. Like I said, the steps are really all the same. So I'm going to show you how to do a complete full circle skirt. And this is about 10.5 inches. So now that I know that, we can just set the doll aside. And what you want to do is, if you're going to do it in a complete one-step full circle skirt, you will need to divide that waist measurement, which for what we're using is a 10.5 inches, by 4. And the reason why you divide it by 4 is because we're going to take our piece of fabric. Again, why did I tell you? Save all your scraps, because you can make little things with them. So you do need a complete square to make a circle skirt. So we're going to fold it in half with the grain line. Now, if we wanted to do a half circle and do 2 pattern pieces, then we would just leave it like so, and we would divide our waist measurement in half, not by 4. But since we're going to do by 4, which gives that really nice vintage feel of the full poodle skirt, circle skirt, you fold it in half, and let's just run our iron back over this. So now what you're left with is a square. Simple enough. So you're going to determine that measurement of your waist. Depending on what your waist is will change where you place this. For us, we're doing it this size, which this is typically what you would use, a little bit larger if you were going to do it for a tree skirt, depending on where on your tree trunk you want it to fall. For a skirt, it's going to be determined by your particular measurement. This is where this useful tool here comes in handy. This is a hip curve and French curve together. What I like about this one versus just the standard French curve is that it does have measurements on it. Makes it very easy to do something like this with. So for this particular skirt, the measurement's going to be 2 3/4 of an inch, because even though the waist measurement is 10.5, you do need to add in that seam allowance. You will have a center back seam. Even though it's cut in all one piece, you will be cutting on one side of it so that you can put in a zipper and your waistband, or for a tree skirt so you can wrap it around. So I'm adding an extra 1/2 inch, which gives me a 1/4 inch on each side there. I'm doing a very narrow seam on this. Again, depending on how much of a seam allowance you want to do will determine on how much you add. Still, you divide that measurement by 4 because you're working with 4 layers here and you only need it once. So we will find that curve. We take our corner fold where we have all of our folds. We folded it once this way, now we fold it this way. And now we take our corner where we have a solid fold and then 2 folds, and we're going to be measuring across this corner. And you just want to find that nice curve on your measurement, and it's for us for this it's a 3 3/4. So if you feel like whipping up a skirt for either your own doll or for a friend, makes a nice little Christmas gift, or for your daughters, or using this for them to learn how to sew, it's great. Now, because this is such a quick little pattern, I am using that disappearing ink pen so that it will really pop on here for you to see it. So I've gone ahead and measured. Now, if you want to know exactly where you're going to be measuring down from, you will measure 1 3/4 inches from the corner before you start that curve. And that's going to be your waist. The next step is to determine how long you want to make it. So if you're working with a specific fabric that you have, like this skirt here, I only had this much fabric, so I just figured out how long the max length I could make it on one side, because you will find that you'll have one side that is a little bit longer, or you are very limited, and then you need to add in that seam allowance or hem allowance as well. So we measure from where we put our marking pen down, and the max we could make this is going to be 6.5 inches. Now that gives us the ability to put a little bit of a hem in there as well, which makes our skirt roughly about 5 inches if we do an inch hem. If we do a 1/2 inch hem, it will make it roughly about 6. And that's just going to determine on what you feel comfortable with doing. So I am going to measure on this other side here, just to see it's roughly the same. And I am going to mark this at my 6.5 inches. It's not quite as long as I possibly could make it, but what it will do is it gives me a little bit to cut off and a little bit to play with. So the way that we're going to do that is going to be slightly different. You don't just want to mark it in one spot or even two. You need to mark that curve. Again, where this particular tool comes in handy. You do want to find, doing a small skirt, you can use your ruler like this. If you are making a skirt for your own self, or even a tree skirt that's going to be longer, you will determine your length, find where that marking is. So again, we're doing this at 6.5 inches. We take our 0, put that at the line for the waistband that we drew, like so. Then determine where that 6.5 inches is, and we'll just make a little dash mark. You might find that it's easier to pin your tape measure at one point and drag it along. Then you just want to move over about a 1/2 inch on that waistband marking and take that tape measure straight down again to that 6.5 for this. Or, like I said, if you're making a longer skirt, it was whatever that predetermined measurement. So, like for the skirt I made, it was roughly 26 inches, and that gave me some hem allowance as well. And you just want to do a couple little dash marks, and I'll show you that here in just a second. The reason why you want to do your dash marks is because then you're going to take that hip curve. Now, even though it is a hip curve, it also works great to make any kind of a curve so that you can have the right shape. You don't want to have little bits where it's a little too long, a little too short. Now, if you are making this a skirt to wear, what you'll need to do before you can put that hem in is let it hang for at least 24 hours so that anywhere that it is a little uneven, you'll see that and you can adjust that with your hem. So, I don't know if you can see here, I've put in little dash marks along where I want to put that hem curve. And then I'll take my hip curve and I'll put it at one corner where it matched and bring it over and see where that other one matches. Now you might actually need to move. There are different widths of this curve. You see it gets a little bit more narrow and it to follow the line of your hip. So I really want to use right in this mark here that's roughly between the 8 and the 18 to get this curve that I'm looking for in this skirt. So what I will do is put it at one spot, and then I will need to rotate that hip curve to meet where I want. And again, I'm just using my disappearing marking pen for this because it is a very quick little pattern. However, if you're doing this on a larger scale, for an actual skirt that you're going to wear and not a tree skirt, I recommend using a pencil or even a pen. And I say that normally I wouldn't say an ink pen, however, because you will be putting this in your hem and it won't be something that shows, you can use that solid ink pen. And it will be a little different. You've got to figure out if you made those markings right, if they hit at the right spot. And it looks like I actually extended one of mine a little too far, but it's meeting this other spot on my fold. So I actually want to adjust that. And then what I'll do, since right here it is showing that my mark and where this is hit is a little different, I'll take my tape measure and remeasure. And it looks like part of this was off, so I'll just bring these lines back up to meet. And again, even if this isn't a permanent pen, it's kind of okay right here because this will be in your hem and it won't be seen. Now, if this is for a tree skirt, again, you might be doing a small narrow hem, or as I did, I used a decorative rickrack, so it's not something that really is seen anyway. So what you have here is your line for your hemline and your waist. So I do recommend when cutting, even if it's a small piece, go ahead and pin with the inside of your markings so that you keep your fabric together and it doesn't shift and you end up with the same lengths and the same cuts on all 4 layers. I'm just going to put a couple pins here up at the top as well where my waist is, and I will show you that. So again, just a couple pins right here and along where I'm going to be cutting with inside. It doesn't have to be directly on that line because you're actually going to cut directly on your line. And then just go ahead and cut it. It is really about the simplest thing you can make is just a straight circle skirt or even a half circle. Now, if you were going to do a half circle, you would do the same thing and then you'd do it again. So if you're going to do a half circle, you might want to do it as a paper pattern first so that you can have it exact. What's nice about that, even if you do it as a paper pattern for a full circle skirt, is that you don't have to redraft it ever again. You have that measurement and you've made your own pattern piece. Now, if you don't have pattern paper for something this small, you can just use regular paper. You can use newspaper. It's really going to be up to you on how you want to do that. Now, I do find that I have a couple little points that I don't want, so I'll just even that up there. Sometimes you do end up with points that are a little bit more pointed on your corners than what you necessarily want right here, and then you just even that up and you'll see them when you open